Welcome back, squad. Thank you so much for tuning in to Full Ride, the college recruiting podcast. This is your recruiting coach, Quito Delgado, and today we're going to talk about the freshman checklist. And believe it or not, it's a very short checklist. Very, very short checklist on what, if my advice to a family who has an eighth grader who is now graduating and now they're entering the ninth grade and they are a student athlete, right? So, what's my advice to this student athlete? What's my advice to their parents, right? And it's actually going to be pretty short because there's not a whole lot that goes into it. But before I get to that, I have a lot of friends, and even family members who have kids that play sports, right? And I've had back and forth conversations with them, over the last month or two. It's like a common theme, and in the ages range from like 10 years old, actually like 8, 9 years old. So I think the oldest is like 12. So now all of our, my daughter included, she's 7 years old. She plays sports. And I have, my brother-in-law, my nephew, he's big into soccer. I think he's 10, 11 years old. Then I have one of my best friends in the world. His sons are very, 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 very active in sports and very good in sports. And, we get to this point where, especially if your son or daughter is good, right? Like, let's keep it real. Not saying my daughter is the best, right? But she started lacrosse this year. She was pretty good. Natural, athlete. She played soccer a few years before. She picked up the sport, and was pretty good at that. Then we had COVID, and then she kind of had to take last year off, but now she's coming back to it this year. She does dance, she does gymnastics, right? Quote unquote, she's a natural athlete. I wouldn't call her gifted by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also a tough judge. But my point is, as parents, you start to see potential in your kids at an early age. And it's so easy for for us, and I'm including myself in this, right? It's easy for us to see something in our children and like want to, I don't know, like just double down in the investment of time, investment of resources, sign them up for every camp imaginable, put them on every elite team imaginable, let them try out for every all-star team. And we do all this, and we kind of convince ourselves that we're doing it because, quote unquote, well, they love it. They absolutely they love all this. And the athlete, and on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, I see it. Like, yeah, as long as they love it, they like it, cool. You're not forcing it on them. And by the way, like, now I'm biased. Like, this is my brother-in-law. This is my one of my best friends. Like, I trust them, and I know them enough to know that like they aren't living vicariously through their children. Like, I know that, and you have to believe me on that. But for every one of them, I know that there are parents who are doing the complete opposite. And they're almost like convincing themselves that like they're doing it because their kid, quote unquote, loves it. They can't get enough of a sport. But deep down inside, they're really doing this because, like, it's an ego thing. They're living vicariously through their child, and quite frankly, like, nothing I say is going to change their mind. They're going to be stuck in their ways. So I'm more or less talking to, and I've actually shared this particularly with one of my best friends. Like, we've had a really good conversation about this. So nothing I share now is not something I've shared with him directly, right? But, like, so let's say you are that parent, and you truly are not living vicariously through your son or daughter. It's like, straight up, my son, my daughter, they love sports. Like, they love to compete, and by the way, they're pretty good at it. You know, they're always one of the best players. They're committed. All this stuff. Like, what do you do with those with those kids? So before I get into the whole, the freshman checklist, for some reason, it's on my heart to kind of touch on this topic briefly. And the number one thing you have to guard against as a parent, with, a quote unquote gifted student athlete, or not even gifted, I don't care if they're gifted or not. Like, this, the number one thing you have to guard against when it comes to your children in sports, in my opinion, is burnout. Straight up, burnout. And you may think I'm crazy, but, like, I want you to truly ask yourself this question. Like, really think about this. What in your current life, whether it's a habit, whether it's your job, whatever it is, like, think about this. And most people listen to this podcast, you're in your 40s, 30s, or 50s, right? Because you got middle, high school age students. So 30, 40, 50s. But think about this for a second. What was the last thing you did for 10, 12 consecutive years? I'm going to pause. I want you guys to really think about that. What was the last thing you did? Whether it's a job, whether it's a lifestyle change, meaning, a diet you started, or a new hobby you want to start. I want to do more bike riding. Okay, so you started bike riding, and then, I want to do more gardening, and then that lasted 2 months. My point is, in our own personal lives as adults, most of us don't do things that last beyond 2-3 years at the most. It's just straight up. I mean, we can kill with ourselves, but for the most part, think about all the fads that kind of come and go. Think about all the things that one day, start of a new year, I'm going to eat healthier, I'm going to work out more, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and like 6 months later, you've fallen off a cliff with those goals, right? Or your interest in that particular topic. I'm going to write more, I'm going to read more, I'm going to tap into my creative side, I'm going to go on more hikes, whatever it is. And again, I'm not saying you never do this. I mean, clearly, maybe you do it. But again, the majority of us as adults, none of us have stuck with anything beyond like 10 years, right? Maybe our spouses, hopefully, right? In our careers, maybe here and there, but even then you probably change jobs. So my point is this: commitment and dedication and discipline is hard as hell. Excuse my language, but it's hard as hell, right? But yet, what are we asking our children to do who play sports? Think about it. We are asking our children to commit to sports at age like 5 all the way up until 18. And if they're good enough, they're going to get to go to play to college. So, but from 5 to 18 high school years, that's 13 years. Add another 4 or 5 years, that's 17. 18 years of sports. And I'm sorry if I'm yelling, but God almighty, come on. That's a lot of time. So, yes, I'm going to talk about what you can do. You know, your freshman, your child is entering their freshman season. You know, this is the summer, they're 8th grade, they just graduated 8th grade. Now, what can you do to set them up as 9th graders if they want to play in college? I get it. But just on the off chance, because you have a 4th grader, you have a 3rd grader, you have a 6th grader, and you're listening to this episode, I want this to really sink into you guys. Like, you need to stop as adults, as parents. We need to stop having this fear of missing out. We need to, as adults, stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. And what I mean by this is, like, for some odd reason, something happened, like, in the early 2000s, the 2000s, I don't know when, but like after the 1990s, definitely, probably in the 2000s it started. But like something happened in the last 10 to 15, 20 years that convinced parents that their kids won't make it. Their kids have no chance of playing in college if they don't play sports year round. If they don't play on multiple travel teams, if they don't play on elite teams, if they aren't fully committed, if they're not all in on the sport by age 10, right? It's garbage. It's garbage. Youth sports has become a $1 billion industry, and the number one thing that they're selling is fear. If your son doesn't attend this camp, they're not going to get a scholarship. If your daughter doesn't go to this, doesn't play on this team, she's going to get skipped over. If you don't pick one sport, right? If you don't play year round, then they're never going to make varsity. And I'm telling you guys right now, that's all bull beep. All right, I'm not going to swear, but that's all BS. And I had this conversation with, again, my best friend who has very, very talented boys. I have no doubt. They're beasts. They're killing it. They're 10, they're 12 years old. And we had this conversation about, do I move them up? Do all this stuff. And I tell him, I'm like, bro, man, like, I'm going to keep it real with you. Nothing they do now. As my daughter, she's in this group. She's a 7th grader. She plays lacrosse. She does dance. She does piano. She does gymnastics. She plays soccer. She wants to try out for basketball. But nothing they do from age like 5 to age 12, 13, 14. That's keeping it real. 5 to like 13, 14. None of that means nothing. The stats that you guys are keeping on your little pads and your apps, who cares? No one cares. No one cares how many MVP trophies they won, championship trophies they won. Now, when I say no one cares, I'm talking about college, right? Because, again, this is a college recruiting podcast. So as it relates to playing in college, nothing your son or daughter does as a 8-year-old, as a 9-year-old, as a 13-year-old, as a 12-year-old matters to a college coach. So this whole notion that, I need to enroll them this summer in 5 different camps so that they can get better, and no. Some of you have your sons and daughters getting up, they're 10 years old, and they already have personal trainers and coaches, and they're doing one-on-one. Why? They're 10. If you can't tell, I'm a little fired up today. I'm fired up because I just see it too often that families are being sold a bill of goods. Right? One of my favorite athletes of all time, everyone knows this, who knows me personally, is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant. And this sticks with me to this day. But he did an interview a couple years back. I don't know who was interviewing him. I wish I could give them the credit. But he was giving an interview, and he obviously, everyone that knows Kobe knows he has a daughter. You know, he had a daughter who was big into sports. And one day he was asking Michael Jordan, who we looked up to, was like, man, like what were you doing at 12 years old? And when Kobe asked that question, he was talking about like basketball. Like what were you doing at 12 years old? How are you, were you working on your jump shot? Were you working on your handle? Were you working on your defense, your footwork? Like what were you doing at 12 years old? Because he wanted to pass it on to his daughter who played basketball. And you know what Michael Jordan's answer was? He said, man, I was trying to hit a curveball. I was trying to hit a curveball. The world's arguably one of the best players to ever touch a basketball at 12 years old was more focused on hitting a curveball than he was with hitting a jump shot at 12. I really need that to sink in. Because times have not changed. Parents have changed. I'm going to say that again. Time has not changed. Parents have changed. How we discipline our kids, how we, encourage our children, how we hold them accountable, all that has changed. And then it also has changed as far as the type of athletes that we are, bringing up. And society has really made us think that if my son or daughter isn't on 3 or 4 teams at once, and I'm not running around from field to field every weekend, then we're not doing enough. And let me be the first, and hopefully not the last, to tell you that's all garbage. You don't need to do this with our children. You really don't. And even this morning, I was bringing my daughter to lacrosse this morning because, her cousins are visiting from out of town. So she's been staying up late. She went to bed like at 11:30 last night. But we signed her up for camp, lacrosse camp 3 weeks ago. But they're in town. They're hanging out, watching movies, playing, whatever, swimming, night swimming. They're having a blast, right? These are memories that she's having. But as a result, she's 7, but she's staying up till 11, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, having a blast with her cousins, making memories. But then she has to get up early in the morning to go to lacrosse camp. And she's dragging. I know she loves lacrosse. She practices all the time on her own. She always wants to play with me and her mom. She loves it. But this morning, getting up for camp, she's dragging. It's hot out. It's gonna be 88 degrees. It's 88 degrees. I'm getting up at 8 o'clock. I just got done with my season. This is all I know. How she's 7 years, but she's I just went to bed late. I just got done with my season 2 weeks ago. Now I'm doing this camp. And I straight up asked her, I was like, Mom, do you want to do this? Do you really want to do this? Do you want to go to camp? She's like, yeah, I'm just tired. She loves it. But my point is now we know, and this is our first time doing this. If next summer her cousins come at the same time to visit from out of town, I promise you this, we will not sign her up for lacrosse camp. And the reason why is because for these 3 days of forcing her to get up super early rather than sleeping in, it's just not worth it. At the same time, we're not going to say, all right, guys, you got to leave your grandparents' house. You got to leave, hang out with your parents, to go home and go to bed early so you can get up for lacrosse practice. No. But unfortunately, I know there are a lot of kids that are doing this every day. 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. God, what are we doing? And my last point on this, and I promise you this, the people who are disagreeing with me right now, you're in it, right? You got kids that are 10, 12 years old, and you're going through it. The people who are agreeing with me right now, I guarantee you, are the ones whose kids have already either stopped playing sports because they got burnt out, or their kids actually went on and then they played in college, and they're saying, yeah, like, you didn't have to do all that. You really didn't. Many of you are making this a business far too early. You're making this a business. You're making it a job for your kids far too early. You know, during lacrosse season, you know, my daughter, you know, we have a lacrosse game, and half the girls are missing from the game because they're on a travel baseball team or they're on a travel softball team. So we got kids at 7 years old playing on 2 different sports at the same time, same season. Look, rec. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. Rec lacrosse and rec softball or travel softball at the same time. Missing game. They're juggling that. Or, so you got 2 sports at once in one season, right? Or, my niece, I went to her game one time, softball game. She's 10. Half the team wasn't there. I said to my brother-in-law, I was like, where's the rest of the team? He said, oh yeah, well, the other kids, they play on a travel softball team as well. And they're doing travel ball, so that's why they're missing today's game. 10 years old. 2 teams. Rec league, travel league. What are we doing, guys? What are you doing? And you think because you're doing that, oh, my kids love it, okay. Or you think that's going to get them, it's going to improve them, their skill set, or they're going to get a scholarship to college. Guys, one sport per season. It's that simple. Like what? And if you don't believe me, like if you think I'm off my rocker here, I'm just gonna throw you some stats, right? Because like men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? So, what do the numbers tell you? Most student athletes who play in college, they do not go on. Who play in high school, only like less than 7% go on to play in college. Less than 7% of high school student athletes go on to play in college. So, you can either keep doing what everybody else is doing, you can keep following the crowd, or you can be different. Let your children play multiple sports, 1 sport per season. Don't have them play on 2 different teams at the same time for 1 sport. That's ridiculous, my opinion. Again, by the way, I'm not saying I'm this know-it-all, I'm an expert. Nah, but I'm just telling you, like, I study this. I pay attention to this way more than probably most of you do. And all a lot of you are doing is following the crowd. You've been sold a bill of goods. So as an objective voice, I'm just trying to let you guys know, like, don't kill your. It's not necessary. Like your child, I'm telling you, you start them in sports at 5, 6 years old, and let's say you have them play soccer at 6. The odds of them once they get to 18 still loving soccer, do the math. It's slim. And now it's the Olympics. So what's going to happen is many of you, you're going to see like a Simone Biles, you're going to see a Sydney McLaughlin, you're going to see, a lot of these Olympians, right? When we talk about Olympians, we're talking about less than 1% of society. You're going to see all these Olympians, and they're gonna think, well, see, look what they're doing. Like gymnasts, yeah, they focus on one sport at age 6. That's like that's not the norm, right? You're gonna focus on a gymnast who's been doing a sport since age 6, and that's all they've done. But look at the dream team for basketball. They're not, a lot of those guys played multiple sports growing up. Volleyball, same thing. There's a lot of sports that don't require you to lock in to one sport at a young age. And I know I'm kind of going way off tangent here, but like I said, this is not my heart. Like I've been thinking about this for a long time, and every week I say I'm not gonna talk about it because it's a little harsh. It's a little, straightforward, and some people may not like it, but I just feel like I keep getting presented with more and more different situations, in talking with family, friends, and I hear there's summer plans, and I'm just like, why? What are we doing? And even in my house, right? My daughter had lacrosse this morning. She has a dance recital tonight. But I told her, but I think it's important that we tell our kids, like, listen, this is what I told her. I asked her, I was like, Melina, why are you doing all this? Well, I like it. I like it, Daddy. You sure? Yeah, I love it. It's fun. I'm having fun. I love it. Okay. Cool. But I guarantee you this, like, she did lacrosse for three days this week, and now there's no more camps. She's done. And we already got an email that said, oh, we're going to have fall lacrosse. We're going to have fall lacrosse. Sign up here. I'm like, no. She's playing soccer during that time. And I refuse to have my daughter, at the time she'll be 8, I don't want her juggling lacrosse and soccer at the same time. And she misses this practice to go to this game, and she misses this game to attend that game with this other team. Like, no. So it's kind of a rant. I know many of you may not like it. It may be tough for you to hear. I'm not apologizing for it. I'm gonna let history support my argument. Most kids who lock in on one sport at age 7, they don't go on to play that sport in college. It's just a fact. It's a fact. You can debate me all you want with emotions. I argue with facts. I argue with numbers. And this is someone who loves sports. I love sports. I think sports is amazing, but I think we have I don't know. It's become such a money making machine that the purity of sports has taken a hit, in my opinion. And we don't need our 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, being exposed to that level of commitment so young. And again, just ask yourself, when was the last time you did anything, you committed anything for 10 straight years, 12 straight years? I'll wait, because you probably haven't. So, with all that said, on a lighter note, what should you do with a freshman with an 8th grader who's entering their freshman year? So a couple of things. Number one, I recommend having a talk with them, right? I always say this to families that I work with. Have the talk. And what I mean by the talk is sit down with your son or your daughter and say, 4 years from now, where do you see yourself? And then as mom and dad, you got to be quiet and let them talk. And their answers may not be what you want them to be. But maybe their answer may be, well, I want to go to college and I want to play sports in college. Cool. Right? If that's their answer, or if it's not their answer, cool, regardless. But my point is, you want to have a talk with your son and daughter to let them know that, listen, you're transitioning from middle school to high school, and now, regardless of whether or not you want to go to you want to play sports in college or whatever, if your goal is to go to college, now your grades really start to matter. Like the grades from kindergarten to eighth grade, they don't look at that on your college transcript. Doesn't matter. Clean slate, right? You have a clean slate now. So you, as mom and dad, it's important for you to sit down with your son and daughter to let them know that, listen, no matter what you've done to this point, it really doesn't matter. It's been a good foundation. Hopefully you got some good habits and whatever. You've identified some subjects that you really like, that you're strong in. But, as far as college goes, it doesn't matter because they don't look at your 7th and your 8th grade or your 6th grade transcript, right? Or what you did in elementary school. Right? So have the talk with your son or daughter and ask him, you're entering 9th grade. Right? It's a big year for you. Now, everything that you did before this is like a lead up to, the next chapter in your life. Like present it like it's a chapter, right? A new chapter, a new start. Either let's keep building on what you've been doing well, or let's hopefully if you've had some struggles, it's time for you to kind of mature a little bit and figure out what's next. And you don't have to have all the answers, but do you have an idea what you think you might want to do 4 years from now? I think it's a good exercise to have with your son or daughter. And no matter what they say, you just have to listen, right? Now, if they say they want to play sports in college, then cool. You let them know, okay, well, mom and dad, we're here to support you. So that's the one thing, though, is have the conversation with your son and daughter. Where do you see yourself 4 years from now? Right, high level, very easy, light conversation to get an idea of their goals. But then 2, let's assume that you have a son or daughter who has expressed that they want to play in college. It's very important for you to really lock in on core classes. So what you want to do as you enter their 9th grade year is go to their guidance counselor and ask them what core classes are available to them in college, at the school, at the high school, right? And I mentioned this so many times, I've had so many episodes, but core classes are like your science, your math, your history, your geography, right? Your language, like Spanish, German, French, religion in some cases, but core classes. We're not talking about art. We're not talking about phys ed. We're not talking about computer studies and some of these other electives. When it comes to college recruiting and eligibility, core classes are what counts. So you want to get together with your guidance counselor as a family, identify which core classes are available to you at your school, and then make sure you are taking them. And quite frankly, that's your freshman checklist, right? Make sure you have the talk with your son or daughter about where they see themselves 4 years from now, and then go to the guidance counselor to talk about core classes, get a good understanding of what they are, what's available to you. And then I guess I'll just add in for the summer, just don't worry about exposure camps and all that. This is all about working on their skills. So send them to developmental camps. Camps that are local camps, hopefully run by, good people, good coaches who have a proven track record of helping student athletes get better. But don't worry about sending them to college camps and all these showcases and exposure camps. There's a time and place for all that. Going into your freshman year is not that time, right? So send them to camps. I'm fine with that, but just send them to camps locally, and that are going to help them, get better and work on their game. I said a lot today. Some of it may be a little bit uncomfortable for some of you. I don't apologize. I really do mean it. I'm passionate about it because I just see too many kids that just get beat down. They get worn out by their parents or by sports in general, and I'm tired of it. And I just feel like sports should be fun, right? Sports should be fun. It could be an invaluable life lesson. Um, it can introduce your son or daughter to so many different, lifelong friendships. It can teach them about competition. It can compete. It can teach them about being team players. It can teach them about being good sportsmanship, good character. It can teach them about accountability. It can teach them about being about commitment. It can teach them about sacrifice, right? So even if they don't go on to play sports in college, you should want your son or daughter, if they like it and if they like playing, but you should want them in sports because it's gonna make them, hopefully it's gonna shape them as people and make them better adults. Like, that should be your number one motivation. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't add to it by making it so serious and so rigid. Don't make it so stressful on them and you as a family because you're hopping around from field to field when they're only 10 years old. Right? It doesn't matter until like they're in 10th grader, 9th, 10th grade. And some of you, again, you're going to disagree with me, but I'm telling you, for 99% of your student athletes, unless they like play gymnastics or unless they're like a prodigy, they tennis, maybe golf, like, I'm telling you, you don't have to stress right now. You don't have to live out in the back of your minivan because you're at 10 different fields every weekend. You got on travel ball when they're 8. You don't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning for, workout sessions when they're 11. Trust me. Like, relax. Let's all relax. Okay? And you can either believe me or not. It's up to you. Right? Free choice. But I'm gonna let history I'm gonna side on the side of history and on the side of facts. Sports is a beautiful thing. Let's not ruin it for our sons and our daughters because we're following the crowd and we have this fear of missing out. And we've been sold this bill of goods. Because that's all really what it comes down to. $1 billion industry, and they're harping on our biggest fears, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look. But this is your college recruiting coach, Quito Delgado, reminding you that college recruiting starts with you. What steps are you taking today to earn a scholarship tomorrow?